All right. We got some people joining. Hello, all. Cool. Hey, everybody. We got some friendly faces in the lobby. So we'll get started here in about 2 minutes. I like kind of giving people the first 3 to 4 minutes to kind of trickle in coming back from lunch. If you do have any questions, feel free to put in the chat, QA, something along those lines. If you pre-submitted, let me know as well. Sometimes most of the time we catch them, but sometimes they do slip through the cracks. Um, yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and we can start putting some eyes on them. We got um, four decisions employees behind the lines here, so we got some big brain power to throw at your asks, your questions. So just let me know if there's anything that we can just talk about. Even if it's like, hey, my organization is doing a certain thing. Can you give me some information about forms? Doesn't have to be a super specific technical question. It can just be a broad conceptual prompt as well. Whatever is most useful for you is best for us. So, let's see, anything popping up here? Q&A, chat, anybody? We'll get started here in about 60 seconds. So, like I said, if you do have a question or you're trying to pre-submit, if you're just here to hang out, that's fine too. I can just do some improvisational learn-in type stuff. But like I said, if you have a prompt for me, like, hey, I know that if your organization or you are specifically working on a specific thing, I can kind of show um, stuff around that concept, which would be nice to kind of have some direction. We'll get started. Like I said, if you no questions, we'll kind of get ripping here in about 60 seconds or so. Probably less than that at this point, 30 seconds or so. All right. While we're waiting to see if any questions drop in, I'll kind of do my general housekeeping stuff, and we got some more people joining, so welcome. Generalized housekeeping stuff. We have on the top right-hand corner, we have the uh, YouTube channel. I've shared it a couple times. As well as on the bottom right, we have the Solutions Marketplace. If you don't have the ability to scan a QR code from your computer, which I imagine you can't, um, the easiest way to find it, in my opinion, is if you just go onto YouTube and type in decisions support, it will find our support channel, decisions support, and it will find our decision support channel, which we post all these lunch and learns, as well as various videos based on usually feedback from these lunch and learns or questions. So we posted one yesterday about external entities. We posted one yesterday about handling comments in that world. Another useful tool on YouTube while I'm at it, and I think the easiest way to find this is we also have a generalized YouTube channel called Decisions. It's at Decisions. So if you just type in Decisions Automation, there it is, at Decisions. Um, and on this, we post a lot of the webinars. So if you've seen a webinar, you haven't been able to make it, but your organization works in a certain field, these are a really great resource for you. So let's say, hypothetically, you wanted to do smart Scrum meetings or do some Excel reporting using ChatGPT. You can kind of watch one of these webinars, and we do have these all of the time. As far as I know, we don't have a current one, but if you are ever interested in saying, hey, when are the new webinars coming out? We try our best to kind of give you that intel in here. But if you go to our website, decisions.com, under resources, we have events. The only new event we have is a virtual submerse. So some folks in here have been to the real life, in real life submerses. Um, and I did get a question. Thank you, Alexander. Yes, I'll gladly will. I'd love to show you something. Um, Yeah, we have real life submersives here. So these are free events. You just got to get yourself here and find a place to stay for 3 days, but they are free. We also, like I said, have an online one. This is the first of its type. So if you wanted to take like a 3 day training online, 3 day online boot camp, um, it might be a good option for you. You know, get a little bit more hands-on. Look at this graphic in the background. That's so slick. But yeah, so we have three of these. We don't have any webinars coming up, but if you wanted to see when the next webinar comes up, it's going to be under, again, that resources and events tab. The final kind of just housekeeping thing that I think is just important is if you type in decision solutions marketplace on Google, or there's a QR code on that starter slide, we have these things, we call them accelerators. But it's just, reduces your friction to deployment. So if you know that you want to run a specific task or flow within decisions, we have these accelerators and they can help you build things out. So let's say hypothetically you wanted to do a shift manager. We have forms, email, workflow, rules, all that kind of stuff. You can download this and import it into your instance and run it that way. Before I get started on the question, I guess it's the same question. So, Alexander, is there a large customer base in Singapore? Yeah, we're a global organization. We do definitely have customers all over the world. I do think that one is generally run by one of our partners in Singapore, but we do have a customer base. Yeah, pretty much. I think we're at like 35 countries, something like that, maybe 40 countries at this point. Definitely worldwide. We were in Sweden last month. We've done them. We've done submersions all over the planet. So, all right. So let's start talking about some content here. The question that we got is, could you go over how to loop through an entity and add it to a list, then do it with another entity and add it to the same list, and then convert that list into a new data structure? All right, I'm going to wrap my brain around that. Could you go over how to loop through an entity and add it to a list, and then do it with another entity and add it to the same list, and then convert that new list into a new data structure? So let me see if I can draw, because I always like doing it that way if I can. Nice. So conceptually, we have, we're going, what would you like is you have some type of entity, and we are going to iterate through, we have a list of entities, I guess is what the first part of that. So we have a list of entities, and we want to iterate through that and add them to a list somewhere and then convert it into a new data structure. And I'll unlock and see if is that close. We have a list of entities that we want to iterate through, and then we want to output that into a new data structure, just the same data. So kind of converting from one data structure to another.
So it's not a list of entities. It's actually just two separate entities,
Okay.
and some like running through both of them and then adding them to the list. And then once I'm done, you are right on that last part where we convert from the list and say, hey, this list is actually a data structure. And I don't know if I need to build out the data structure, the new data structure that these data points are going to fill beforehand, or can I do it during the flow, or should I do it beforehand? Just since it's going to be consistently used, it will be used in another report as well.
Yeah, let's see if we can build some of this out. Trying to think of the path of least resistance here. And are you using case entities, probably.
They're using data structures really are the entities. I'm connected into already built data structures.
And these do these have complex types in them, or are they just simple types in the structures?
Let me check. Let me double check for you. I'm pretty sure they're just simple. Because I set them out. They're not like complex by any means. They're like what you have right there, where we
Ooh.
have string, datetime, and a currency field as well.
All right, so let's create something here. Create a flow. Call this like structure revamp or something. I don't know.
Oh, what am I using it for?
No. I was just talking to myself.
Could you talk about the use case, Alexander? I'm just curious because this will help us with a recommendation.
So essentially there's let's say that there is two teams that were basically combined and they originally had their own entity where they were like keeping case files or cases, right? And even though they're separate teams, the data is relatively similar. So it's probably why they, would be combined into one team. But essentially they had cases coming through that were had like our amounts that we're selling items for. And then another team actually had cases where they were like whether or not let's say the amount was approved or not. And so essentially it's very much the same data. Like each entity has the same data. And so now we're just trying to combine them all into one data structure and essentially use that for a report to give to them so they can kind of like we can have a interface that our end users can use to see what reports are currently in queue is kind of the goal because we have it kind of separate right now, but we're trying to combine it into one.
So you're really talking about like you have data that you want to like import into a different data structure,
Mhm,
right? Gotcha.
mhm.
So this is more like a data migration thing. Okay. No, that helps.
Yep. I mean, that data will still exist where it is because other people need it, but we're going to build off the current data structures that are built for these two teams, and then combine it into one new data structure. And then use that new data structure in a report because, we can't right now.
So I created two entities, or I'll kind of go back to where I was before I run this, I guess. I put two records through it, and we're going to try and transform it into a new structure. Is that, I mean, again, apologies, it's kind of um, a quick one. So I made two records here, Jared and Jeremy with different values in them, and we want to convert those into a structure. Are you matching? Because you said you had people with the same records. Let me see if I can draw this out
Well, I'm
again.
saying that there's there are different types of records, but the general data is the same. Like, column one, two, three, and four are going to be strings, and the fifth one's going to be a decimal.
Where's this data housed? Is this in an external database or is this
It's
in?
actually held internally inside of decisions currently.
Oh, okay, I got you. And you're just
Yeah.
trying to migrate that. Okay, okay. So there's a couple ways we can do it. Robert, if you can,
Sure.
close out of this.
Hmm.
So what you would have to do from the beginning is you'd have to create that kind of whatever that combined data structure is, right? If the properties are the same, then you could probably just pick, one of the data structures to be the main one. That could be something you could do, or you can just create a third one and call it, hey, this is all, um, these, whatever is relevant for your business use case.
Yeah. That's
Um,
currently how I'm doing it. I'm making a third one.
Okay, so you have a third one. Okay, cool. So then to
Okay.
migrate the data, it's pretty simple. Close the X over there. And what you could do is go ahead and right click your Alexander 1 simple data structure, Robert. And what you can do is you can go ahead and do more, and you can do import and export data. And so you can say, so there's data in here. So let's export this data, right? And what you'll get is you can get all the fields that you need. So select all the fields. And then you can download all the existing entities. So this is what you would do on both those data structures. Let me download both of those into my two files. And then you would download it, open it, and go ahead and just launch it, Jeremy. And so now you have the data from your data type 1 and data from your data type 2. Now, since the fields are the same, you can just choose which one of the files you want to copy all the data in and paste it here. And then now you've created one file that has everything. And so go ahead, Robert, you can close this. And so now the next thing you would do is you'd create that third data structure. And let's say you already created it. And in this case, go back to Alexander 1, Robert. You don't have to create it. You would now use, instead of the import export, you would use the more, and you would say import data. And you can say import data from a CSV. And go ahead and left click that. And then you'd select all the fields, and then you would say continue. And then it would ask you for that data file import to import all that information. And then what it would do is it would say, okay, cool, I got all those files. The sample download just shows you how you need to organize the columns to get the data to match up, to make sure your ID field goes in the ID field, or your currency goes in your currency or field 2, right? All that stuff to make sure that's kind of accurate. And then once you do that, you upload the file, then all of your data is within that new data structure now. So that would be a simple way to do it.
So, okay, that looks good. I do have a question. So
Yeah.
the people who are, working through this, quotes are going to keep coming through these channels or keep filling up these entities, I guess.
Mhm.
And won't I have to do that every single time? Like, go in and upload the CSV?
You won't have to do it every time. This is just to get the same set of data. So I mean, I'd recommend doing this during like migrating the data, getting a backup. Always back this up.
Mhm.
So you have a backup of this data, but then do the migration after hours. And then what you can do is in your flows, you probably have to test this in dev first before you deploy to prod, is test in dev to make sure that, hey, when a process comes in, that it will create via the new data structure. Or if you still want to house the data in the other place temporarily and then just store it in the third place, then you would add a create step, for that process to your flow, and then create the data that way. But that's just a one-time a migration.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Cool. Just trying one quick thing here. Sure. Why not? And you said this just, I know, just because we don't really have any other questions, I just wouldn't mind doing a little bit of, oh, we do have maybe some. No, I wouldn't mind doing a little bit of building, just kind of use our time here. Um, so I have,
Mhm.
cool. So we made these structures. You said those fields are basically the same, or like,
They will be. Well, I'm only going to map the ones that match. Not all of them are perfect. It's not perfect matches. No, but I will in a flow I was planning to map them correctly. Some of them are actually missing some fields, and then I had to add them in through the API on their end, on the flow that kind of pulls in that data. But that's been added now. And so all the entities themselves match pretty much. I mean, they don't match because they still have their own fields, but they have the 7 fields or so that I'm going to be taking from each entity exist in all of them. And it's
okay.
not just 2, I'm actually doing 3 entities and combining those into one.
Ooh. I do wonder if we named these the same. We're getting a little crazy here.
Currently, my flow looks like, let me see. I have a create data step at the very beginning. I'm not sure if I really need that. I have the first kind of fetch entities in the first column, and then a for each loop step looping through, adding it to a list, and then a second entity, and then the third doing the same thing. And then at the end, I have a mapping step. But once again, I don't know if that's the best way to do it.
Let's just I'm trying something crazy here. I don't know if this is gonna work, but we're learning here together, I guess. I don't know if it'll even let me do that.
Yeah, that looks somewhat similar to mine. Where you have the fetch energies and then the for each step.
Yeah, so
Except I have it that when it loops through, I have a for each step, and then I have an add item to list step on the next. And then I put the second entity on the done of the for each step.
and then you ran it again with another loop.
Yeah, because each one has its own individual loop. Yes.
Yeah. I was hoping I could name them the same and then just iterate through all the whole collection at one time, but it's not letting me do that. So Alexander 2, we'll just change this name to fetch Alexander 2, which is a list of Alexander 2. Type Alexander 2. Collection from the fetch entities. Item. We're just calling this an item. I don't know why it didn't. Hmm. So then we'll add, let's go ahead and connect this back to this so that we get the loop name back. We'll call this Alexander full list. And then we'll call this one select from flow, Alexander full list. The new item will just be the item, but we don't want it to be a string type. We want it to be a mm.
Right there, when you're changing the list type, what are you doing? Are you changing it to the structure?
This bit right here.
Mm-hmm.
This changes the type that we're outputting. So I'm trying to find a seamless way to get it into 3 without having to do some like obscene mapping. I'm basically just having fun at this point, to be honest with you. I'm trying to
Build
figure,
data on it if that's what you
yeah,
want. It would be a
right.
build data and
And
then
then
you
map in
the
item
items. Yeah,
suffixes, yeah. But then you'd have to do a ton of mapping.
only for
Uh,
that one of them. Only for that one. That's it.
true, true.
Wait,
You only have to
why
do
wouldn't
it.
you have to do it for all of them? For all the
Because it's gonna
entities?
loop through. Well, it's because it's gonna loop through. So you
Well,
do it for all the properties
all
once, and
four, yeah, all four once. Yeah.
Okay.
So then I can go item ID, select from flow, item currency, select from flow, item field
Also,
2.
how did you get your build data to pop up? Is that under new
So
item you put build
you,
data?
yeah, and it'll only show up here if you have the list type. Like if this is a string or something, like
Mm-hmm.
if you're adding it to a list of strings, you're not gonna be able to build data on the list of strings. It's only because it's a complex composite type.
And the original list in this always kind of confused me. Like, what does that actually mean? Original list? Is that where I'm pulling this from, or
The way
do they
that I
want to
ration,
know?
yeah, the way that I rationalize it, I'm not sure if this is technically true, and Jared can probably clarify, is like notice how, okay, I was able to select from flow for Alexander 3 here. But if I disconnect this, I no longer have that option for Alexander 3. Like it disappears. It reappears when I connect this back. What the original list in my current understanding of it is if you had like a create data step or something over here, um, or some type of data pool, you can basically pre-populate that list. So if I made a create data step over here and made the type Alexander 3 and said, and again, this might not be right. So Jared, correct me if I'm walking down the wrong world here. Um, if I pre-populated this and added stuff to this, right? So I added my own record, 13, whatever, all this stuff. Um, it would go through and in my original list, I would already have, as long as these were named the same thing, pre-populated and pre-populated. Despite this only having two entities in it, by the time it's done, it would have three because I pre-populated one from here. So like if you have an original list that already has stuff in it, if you have an original list that already has stuff in it and you're trying to add items to that list, that's why you would do original list. But if you're kind of starting with an empty bucket and you're trying to add items to that empty bucket and I iterate with two records and I'm adding two, you could just name these the same thing and they're an empty bucket. Is that right, Jared? Something along those lines? That you can like with an original list, you can pre-populate. So you're not adding to an empty list. You're adding to a list that already exists. The original list, and then you can have an output of a new list. Is that kind of right?
I mean, yeah, or because you're using a loop, I mean, yeah, you could do it that way. It's not like a must, but you can also, if it's already on new list, because you're looping through it, you can reference the new list
Yeah,
and
but
do it that way.
what's the functional purpose of original list? Is so that you can have a list that already exists that you can add to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If there's a pre-existing one. Yeah, because
Yeah.
usually if you're combining things, then you'd have an original list.
Right. Yeah. So if you were combining, but because we're not combining anything, we can just name it. And because this output comes back through and loops back into it, and technically it's downstream from itself, you can make
Mhm.
the original list when it goes through one time, it makes an output.
You can make the output variable the input variable, yeah.
Yeah. And it kind of just loops through.
Hmm.
Um,
And when you're doing the build data step, are you building the data as the final data structure that you're gonna like combine together, or are you mapping it as its current data structure, if that makes sense?
Build data just means that you're opening and expanding all of the data structure properties for you.
yeah.
And then whatever you map into it, that's going to be the thing that it will populate the value for that variable. But that's all that build data means.
I thought the build data was based off the list type. Is it? Are
It is
they
based on the
separate?
data type. If you build data on the accounts table, you'll see the property of the accounts table. If you build data on your own designed entity, then you'll see the properties for your user defined entity. But that's all it really is. It's just saying, hey, new item build data, here's all the individual variables or properties, I'm sorry, properties of that data structure
Mhm.
that you can add values to. And then when you select something from the flow to add a value to it, then that's what makes it put in, like for example, if I have an account object and I have first name, last name, email,
Mhm.
if I say build data on my account object, I will see the properties first name, last name, email, and then I can select from flow, hey, my first name variable to populate that first name property on that object. And then when I run it, you'll see that on my first name property on that account object will be Jared or Robert or whatever
So,
data I passed in.
so then I would definitely want my new data structure to be my list type then. So that
Correct.
way I can actually map it.
You got
Okay,
it.
so that's gonna be the same throughout and all these add item to list steps.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Kind of an ugly format here.
I'm also following along. I know you can't see my screen, but I'm looking through. So Alexander 3 is the final data structure. When did you make that structure?
I made it earlier. I copied when you and Jared were talking.
Okay.
I just went and copied it, so it has all the same fields. What is my validation issue here?
You have to change the variable name on your for each step to something different. So I would say this is Alexander one item because, right, you have two variables that are outputting same data, different data types.
Ooh.
And then so that one would be Alexander two item.
All right, so now we gotta get this is the remapping game here. Alexander 1 item ID. Alexander 2 item, or Alexander 1 item currency. Alexander 3 item. Oh, yep. Field 2. Just gonna do one more of these. And we're adding it to this list called Alexander 3. Cool. We're adding it to this list, and then you can create from that. This is going to be a little bit crazy here, but apologies. And these are backwards. Two item currency. All right, we're almost there. Alexander 2. Dang it. Alexander 2 item field 2. Feeling good. Alexander 2 item field 3. Love that. We're adding to the list. We're adding to the same list here, named variables, Alexander 3, Alexander 3. So we're going through our first batch of structure, our second batch of structure, and then from here, I'm going to try and go user defined, just to get some automation here. Database structures. We're going to create Alexander 3 in this based on every item that goes through that. Again, ideally, we should be able to pick item here. It's a bit of a loop train here, but um, conceptually, fetching one, adding it to a list, fetching another record entity structure, adding it to that same list, and then iterating through that consolidated list to create them. So I saved that, start debugging. It ran 2 plus 1 because I only had one record in the other one. So I had one record in this, or sorry, two records in this one and one record in this one. One record, two records. The reason why it says 3 here is it hits the loop 3 times, hits it on the way out, basically. So now in the world that I want to live in, I can create a flow and say, I'm just checking. I'll make a report, man. Why not? Let's just do a quick little report on it rather than fetching. Yep, I think we're good. That's all 3 records that came from the 2 previous databases. So
Oh, cool. How did you get the what was that last node you were using there?
the last note.
Node. I'm sorry, step.
Oh, sure. I got you, man. Yeah. I just did a loop and did a create step and then created based on item. So I know this is again we're kind of all over the place with this one, but
That one, the
yeah,
square box.
conceptually all of this top area is 2 of the same kind of paths. See if we go. We're just like some kind of annotation. So these top 2 sections do the same thing for 2 different structures. This and this are the same thing for 2 different structures. This down here, I just say, okay, because I outputted from add items to list, I outputted Alexander 3 called Alexander 3. And then on this one, I did the exact same thing, Alexander 3 of the type Alexander 3, because I was able to build data and map in the items, even though the structure changed, right? We're like on this one, we're Alexander 1 and we're iterating through Alexander 1, but we're adding it to a list type of Alexander 3. Now that I go down here, I can say Alexander 3, the item comes through. So for every item that's in that consolidated list called Alexander 3, I did a for each and then did a create step based on the information held in that item. And I can gladly export this for you and send it to you if you'd like, or send you
Yeah, that'd be
screenshots,
great.
whatever.
Yeah.
Are you on 9 by any chance? Or are you on version 8?
I'm on version 8.
Okay.
We're gonna get an
Um,
upgrade pretty soon.
I'll still send you the export, but I think I'll send you some screenshots too. I'll email them to you. But just conceptually, these two are the exact same thing for your two different structures, and then I'm just looping through and creating at the end. And then that gives me the ability to consolidate.
Cool.
Another way you could do it, if you can, go to Robert, go create another flow, and we're gonna do the exact same thing, just a different method.
Sure.
This one is a little bit more cleaner. So just this is like a version 2. And what you can do is fetch entities for both Alexander 1, Alexander 2. So you'll need 2 fetch entity steps. Fetch that data.
Well, buddy. All right.
Cool. And then just connect both those steps up. You have to rename the output variable because it's the same. And it's gonna not like it. So you can say any results too. Cool. And then get 2 list mapping steps. Perfect. And then connect it to the other one. And then grab I think it's like a save entity step you can grab. This is just another way to do this. That's kind of a little more cleaner. Cool. And then say save multiple entities. And that's going to be Alexander 3. And what that's going to do is we're not done with it just yet. So go to list mapping step 1, Robert. And so go ahead and select from flow and grab fetch entity or entity results. A1. Yeah, perfect. And then now your output type is going to be Alexander 3.
Oh, true. I didn't even think about this. Yeah, this is a smarter way.
And then it's just a
Yeah.
lot cleaner. And then you
Yeah.
build data. It's essentially, I think in the backend essentially does the same thing. So now you don't reference the entity results. You always reference the item underscore
But,
input. This is essentially a loop within itself. And so to say, okay, for all of those fields that are the same, we're going to go ahead and map them to this data type. So you're kind of utilizing this as a kind of converter, right? And so you do the same thing on the other one, convert it to Alexander 3.
So we're actually using the list mapping step this time.
Yep,
yeah.
this is another version. And then now all you have to do, since both list mapping steps output the same variable, output out the third output, third data type, you can leave that just outputs because it will combine those lists together because they're both the same variable name. And then you can just run it that way. So that's kind of a little bit of a different way to do it. A third way you could do it is you can also use converter flows, where you can say, hey, taking this input and this list and convert it into something else, and they just reference that converter flow. That's a third way to do it.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think
That's
his method is a little cleaner. I didn't even I overbuilt, but it like he said, I think it functionally kind of works the same way, but it's this mine was definitely an overbuild.
okay. I don't get why you didn't have to loop through though. Is it just because it dumps it in there once you map
Yeah,
to it?
because list mapping is it takes in a list and outputs a list. So
Yeah. And
it
so think of this as like this list mapping step. When you click on the show item mapping editor up at the top,
yeah.
it takes you in this menu where it says, okay, for each one record, so the underscore input, convert it into this Alexander 3 build data that we're passing it through. And so it's going to loop through, then it's going to output it and create this and then put it out there. So,
I see your point
well,
there, BT. So you're probably he's yeah, if the commentary in the chat saying that if you name these the same, it's not going to combine them, it's going to override. So when this would override it, rename it. I'm not sure. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that this would work, VT, but it would take me too long to
we
test
just
it.
have to test it. We could
Yeah.
test it. I could be wrong about that. It's been a
But
while since I've done this build, but you may have to do build array and do it that way. So.
Let's see, those are selected path is not valid. Why is that? This is list of Alexander 3. Oh, because these are individual items.
You built the array, you didn't join the array.
Ah, true. Good point. Good point, sir. Fair play. Yeah, I like that. Similar methodology. But like I said, Alexander, I'll send you all this stuff. I'll send you some screenshots too on the email.
Okay, so this one didn't override it. It's good.
No, that well, I think I'm not even sure. It might have worked, but I think someone in the chat said it would override it. I've done similar stuff where you name the variables and does combine it. They might be right. They might have more insight on this than I do. But just to be safe, like this is a better this iteration is a better safe than sorry kind of thing. Um, but yeah, I feel good about how both these would work. I mean, I could test it by building a whole nother structure, but then at this point, if I ran this again, it would. Well, I guess I can just run this and it would duplicate. Let's check.
I
No.
don't think it will duplicate because you had the same ID.
Oh, true. Good point.
So it just will overwrite if you put in
Yeah,
something different.
but I feel good about it. I think at the very least you have some working options there.
Definitely.
Um,
Yeah, it's more than I had before, which is just a bunch of for loops, for each loops and random steps. So I appreciate that, guys.
yeah, man. Anytime. And I appreciate the question. It makes my life significantly easier, and it's nice to just like I enjoy the troubleshooting side of this, so it's fun for me too. Let's go to that new flow. Can you test it with the same variable name and see if it combines two lists? And check that in like the debugger kind of thing you're talking about.
Yeah, that'd be the way you'd have to test that out.
Yeah. Outputs, outputs, outputs. It's just get me the one record. So I think you're right. It does not combine them because one of those structures, probably the first one or the last one in this chain, only had one record in it. Whereas if we go through and go back to the previous methodology, let's go. Learning, learning, learning. There's all three. Yep. So you were right. We would need to. Yep. Good catch there. Yeah. So the join arrays would let you consolidate, whereas the rename with the same functionality would overwrite the previous record. And the way I checked it is I named them the same and debugged it, and I saw I only had one record, which is probably this one from my last structure, because these are names and this is a fruit. So I know that one only has one in it. But then when I did the join arrays, it was able to join them. So I'll make sure I send you the right one, which is this one. What other questions or comments, anything we have in the chat or the Q&A? Anything else I can kind of discuss for the last couple minutes before we start to close them out? All right. Well, thank you guys. Thank everybody for your input. Thank you for the fun build prompt. This was a nice one. So we will see you guys or folks tomorrow. If you have any questions, like I said, feel free to email trainingsessions.com or anything. Is there a better method to do math? What do you mean by that?
Just I'm new to decisions like a question. And I thought it was so weird. There's a step for adding, this step for subtraction. And so just like a step where I could just kind of type stuff in on me. Hey, this plus this, and
Yeah,
where I
it's
don't have to like make a new step.
let me
Or
think of the name here. There's a really great one. It's called
Evaluate expression.
yeah, evaluate expression. Dang it, Jeremy with it, dude.
I'm the math guy.
True. Yeah, evaluate or evaluate dynamic expression. I believe this one you put in an answer. But yeah, evaluate expression is going to be a good math one for you. I can kind of give a quick one. Math. So you got this one. Yeah, so this kind of stuff here. Um, and I'm honestly not super familiar. You're talking about just running like this kind of math? Is this how it works, Jeremy?
More.
Well, yeah, but you can like if you type in A plus B,
Okay. Oh,
it
nice.
recognizes the letters and creates inputs for them. So then you can have those pass in or come from whatever.
Wow.
And they can be
Oh,
full
okay.
words. It can be a full word and it'll recognize it as a full word, whatever it is. Just anything that's not a number, it'll recognize it as a potential input. So then you can, set up constants or pass it in from wherever.
Now that's really cool. Is there a
Cool.
way to do that like with if statements too?
You
Or some
can create expressions with rules through rules, I know. I haven't done it personally myself, but I know like within rules you can actually create an expression when you're creating a rule.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, because I was like, oh, I have to add this and then subtract, run a subtraction on it, and then I don't know, it just kind of got messy quick. But yeah, that is perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for.
Cool. There you go. Thank you, Jeremy. One thing, just insight from the sidelines. Evaluate expression, it can be hard to maintain because it can give you unpredicted exceptions if you pass in null data. So just be aware that if data goes in null into evaluate expression, you can have some unexpected consequences. But if you're just doing simple math, I think you could be, would be fine. Cool. Anything else? All right. Well, I learned a lot. So hopefully we'll see some of you folks tomorrow. We're going to go ahead and call it here. We did 48 good long minutes. So we will see you guys next time. Thank you for joining.